Hi, once again. Welcome to another session of our POD discussions. And today we are discussing command line arguments. Very interesting topic. Command line arguments in C. Okay. So in C, when we talk about command line arguments, we are looking at two basic things, Argc and Argv. I wonder who gave them those names. Anyway, command line arguments. Before we delve into what command line arguments are and how to understand them and how to use them, I always say this thing, that anytime a new concept is introduced, the first question you ask yourself is, what is this? Then find out, why do we even need this? When will we use this? Then probably talk about how it's used. So for now, if for all the C stuff that we have learned, okay, if you want, always go back with these 4 questions to assess yourself. Just go back with these 4 questions to assess yourself. So when you talk about functions, ask yourself, what are functions? Why do we use functions? When should I use a function, and how do I use a function in C? Okay, so today it's about command line arguments. But before you wholly understand this thing, before you wholly understand it, you need to understand what functions are. What functions are, how to create functions, okay, or almost everything about functions. And we are glad that we have done a section on functions already. So if you are new here, just know that we have already done a section on functions. It's available on YouTube that you can always have access to it. So if you want, pay attention today, but when you are done, take your time to watch the lesson on functions, okay? So I would want to start this whole thing talking about functions before I come into command line, and I believe by so doing it will help a lot of you understand this. So when we talk about a function in C, I think I should make this simple. Let's create a function called sum. Then we'll say integer x and integer y. Okay, and what this function is going to do is to return x plus y. Okay, so this is a simple function in C, and hopefully everyone here understands this syntax. Very important. The term that I use here is syntax. Syntax, do you spell it with an H or without an H? Sometimes I get confused, but I mean it's syntax. Anyway, without an H. Okay, thank you. All right. So the syntax of the function is very important. The first thing that I want for us to appreciate, someone probably tell us, why do we have int here in front of the sum function? What does it represent? Why is it there? Anyone? Why do I have int in front of sum? What is it doing there? If I take it off, what will happen? Just share your opinion with us. Hi, Steven. The return value. Say it well. You said you think it's the return value. Hello?
Hello, Doc.
Hi, Tony.
The int is telling us that the function sum is going to return an integer.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's not say the return value, but it's a data type for the return value. So all that we are saying is that when we put an integer here before the name of the function, we are just saying that, hey, this function is going to eventually return an integer. So if you write a function and end up returning a float, that is going to be a problem because you said that it's going to return an integer. Okay, so at least once you know this, then we are good to go. So we know that every function, before we write a function, we have the data type that is going to return. Okay, so we can call that a return data type is there. Okay, then after the return data type, we have the name of the function. So in this our case, the name of the function is sum, S-U-M. After the name of the function, we have the parentheses or bracket. But what is inside the brackets? How do we call the things that we put inside the brackets, like this and this? What is the technical term for them? Yes, anyone?
These are the arguments.
They are called arguments. Okay, arguments. So one thing you should also take note of is when you get to some other programming language, you'll be using the term parameters more. Okay. So in C, you can call them formal parameters or arguments, commonly called arguments. So that is the point of interest. If you saw the topic for today, we said what? Command line arguments. So now you know where the word argument is coming from. That whenever you have a function, the things that you put inside the parentheses are called arguments. Or we are driving somewhere, at least. I'm not steering us in that direction. So hopefully you get there with me safely. Please don't fall off. Okay, so this is the basic structure of a function. Then we have the block of code, okay, which starts and ends with the curly brackets, and everything inside is the body of the function. Then the next question is, what is the essence of passing arguments to a function? Anyone share with us? I think today we should make a more discussion. Like, we've had a good discussion before starting the session, so I think we should continue like that. What's the essence of passing these things here? This int S, int Y. What would have happened if we didn't have them? Like, those are the kind of questions you should be asking yourself to help you understand these things. So what's the essence of argument? We are not talking about command line arguments. I'm talking about a function. Like, just as you said, what we put in the bracket is known as an argument. So why at all would you even want to give an argument to a function that you create? Yes, let me listen to you. At least 3 people should share their opinions on that.
I think the argument, the parameters, in this case, the formal parameters, they are like placeholders.
Okay.
They are like placeholders that takes the actual parameters or arguments and use it in place of the what was put there as the parameter, something like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Yes, I want to listen to 2 more people. 2 more
Hello,
people.
Doctor.
Hi, Tony.
The way I understand the argument that are passed into a function is that whenever you pass an argument into a function, it's telling the function that this is what you're going to use. You know,
Okay.
this is what you're going to use to like execute the code. The code you're trying to run. Yeah.
Okay.
That's how I understand.
All right. Okay. Last person. One last person. Those who are new here, you're all allowed to speak. So just open up and speak. One last person. Hurry up. Oh.
I just wanted to see. It's the same thing that Tony said I wanted to say. So I don't think there's anything different.
So you express it in your own words.
Just like when you are passing int S and then int Y as the arguments. It's just like those parameters are those things that we are going to use in writing whatever we are going to write. we must make reference to them, use them in one way or the other in the code.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
All right. Thank you all for your submissions. All right, so let me take it this route. Whatever your function is, okay, I've explained that a function is like an action word. It helps you tell your program to do something. So at the definition of this function, we are going to add two numbers. So this function that we have created, sum, is going to add two numbers, irrespective of what the numbers are. So far as we get to those numbers, its role is to add those two numbers. All right. But since we can't determine beforehand what those numbers are, because we can give it any number at any point in time. So what do? We put some form of placeholders there. Okay, so that in real time when we want to do the addition, we'll now provide the actual values that are going to be put there. Let me come again. This function that you and I are defining right now, sum, what it's going to do is that it's going to add two numbers. The question is, what are these two numbers? In fact, we want it to be able to add any two numbers at all. But we can't beforehand, like we can't, once we are defining the function, we can't come up with the numbers ourselves right now. Because today it could be 2 and 4, tomorrow it could be 7 and 8. It could be anything at all. Okay, so what do? We create a place, knowing very well that, hey, this function is two numbers. So eventually when we pass these two numbers to it, the function should know what to do with these two numbers. That is all we're doing. So just as it was said earlier, it's some sort of a placeholder so that eventually when we are ready to use it, we are going to pass those numbers to the function. One key thing is that whatever you are going to pass to these numbers will probably come from outside. Okay, it will come from outside, maybe a different function. So let's go to our compiler and try and use this function. Let me start a new compiler. Okay, so we have the basic structure of C. Let's build our sum function out here. And sum and x and y. Okay, then what is it doing is returning x plus y. Okay, we need to declare this function, so bring it up here to declare it. Great. All right, so let's see. We want to say z is, okay, int z is equal to sum 2 and 4. Then let's go ahead and print z %b. I'm not explaining these things because I believe by now we've already done these things and hopefully you understand them. Otherwise, you still have some background learning to do, so you have to go back to them. Okay, so now that we have this, what you can see is that the definition of this function is already here. We have created placeholders here that we can pass any set of values to it. So at the end of the day, 2 and 4 are being passed to this function sum. So 2 and 4 here are our arguments. If you go ahead and run this, hopefully it gives you the right answer. So that is 2 plus 4. I can decide to change this to 8 and 24, and that should give me 32 if it's working right. Okay, so what you see is that these ones here are just what's placeholders for specific values that we are yet to pass. And the program can be so complex that maybe here, instead of even coming here to pass these values directly, we can have integers, say a equals to 8 and integer b equals to 24. Okay, so we could have things like this, where this is a and this is b, and still when we run it, it gives us the same result. Okay, so we can have a very complex function, complex program, but eventually or essentially, all that we are doing is that this sum knows that it takes two arguments. And those two arguments, after it takes it, the definition of the function will tell us exactly what to do with it. That's all that is important. Okay, so by now you have seen how arguments are used. You pass an argument to a function. It just serves as the placeholder, that expecting that eventually you put something there. Okay, so we'll transition to command line arguments soon, but hopefully by now you know what arguments are and how we use them. All right, the next important thing that we need, in fact, there are a lot of things that we need to know to be able to understand command line arguments well. We need to understand how arrays work. We need to understand how pointers work. We need to understand, okay, when we mention arrays, specifically even strings, we need to understand strings and how we use them. Okay, so that is very important. Once we have all those basics covered, we know what functions are, we know what the arguments are, we know what arrays are, we know what strings are, we know what pointers are. Then now we can play with command line arguments. Okay, so let's talk about command line arguments and what they are. So basically, when we say command line arguments, okay, what they are, by now almost every one of us understands what command line itself is. All right, if you don't know what command line itself is, what I can say is that that terminal that you've been using is a command line. Okay, where you give commands. So that terminal where you give commands is basically the command line. All right, then this means that there are functions that you are going to be using, or in C in particular, or maybe I should mention this. When you take a look at this program, there are two functions here. What and what? Someone should tell me. There are two functions in this program that we've written. What are the two functions? This program that we've written. Yes. Sum and what?
And main.
Sum and
main.
printf. Printf.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. There's more than two functions. Thank you very much. So, okay, there are three functions. Thank you. I like that one. So there are three functions. We have sum as a function, taking parameters x and y, something like this. Then we have printf as a function. So printf is actually a function. Please pay attention to it, but we won't concern ourselves with it. Then there is the main function. Okay, one thing that you should know is that the main function is a very essential component of every C program. And I'm pretty sure by now almost everyone has run into the problem or command line error where you say reference to, what's the error? They say reference to something main. I've forgotten that, meaning the main does not exist. Okay, so you can't find your main function. So very important. You can't run any C program without a main function. Once you delete the main function, so let's go ahead and try changing this to something else and run our program. Cannot open output file. Permission denied. Okay, this is an online compiler, so it may act differently from the one that we know. Okay, but without the main, your program won't run. Keep that in mind. The reason is that when a compiler runs, the first thing that they are looking for is the main function. So the control is in the main function. That's the first thing they go to. before any other thing. So the main function, we need to identify the main function. Okay, this main function, just like any other function, here we had some, can also take up arguments. It can take up arguments, any sort of argument. But there are two types of arguments that we can pass to main. Pay attention. There are two types of arguments that we can pass to main. So before we start talking about command line arguments, we've been using one type of argument in main, and that type of argument is the void argument. Void. So when we started writing C programs, if you recall, we used to write int main void. Okay, so that is the first type of argument you can pass to main. And all this says is that, hey, I'm not passing any real values to main. Like, I'm not passing anything to main. It's void, empty, nothing. Okay, that's all it means. So that is one of the ways that we can pass argument to the main function. But there is another sort of arguments that we can pass, and that is what we refer to as the command line arguments. Okay, the reason why we say they are command line arguments is that when we are about to run the program, we call the name of the program, which we will see soon. We call the name of the program, and we are going to pass some argument to main. If you want to pass argument to main, or like the way we had it with sum. After you have passed the argument to sum, when you were about to use sum inside here, you now give it the actual value. So, for instance, we said 8 and 24 from here. Okay, that was when we were about to run the program. But unfortunately, when we are about to run this program, we can't get main somewhere. So it's not now that we are going to create here and say main. No, it doesn't work like that. Then pass the values to it. So the only time we can really give the exact values for main will be when we are quoting the name of main or the program in the command line. So now the arguments that we pass to main can be referred to as command line argument, because unlike all these other functions, any other function that we create, we can reuse that function somewhere else. And when we want to call the function, that is when we will pass the argument. So you should know this. See how C runs the program, and you understand why we are calling this command line argument. When C is going to run the program, okay, the very first thing it looks for is the main function. Okay, so after it has accessed the main function, if there are other functions, in this case sum, it will now go and execute sum. So inside your main function, you can pass some arguments to sum. Okay, say 4 and 6. You pass it within the main. But the moment you start this program, the first thing is the main function is being executed. So at what time will you be able to pass variables to, arguments to main? Because the moment you run your program, main is called. Unlike sum will wait till main is called. Inside main function, you can call sum. But main is the very first thing that runs. So it means that if we want to pass some argument to main, we won't get the chance to call some others before we pass the value to main, then we now call main. The moment we run our program, main is going to run. That means for us to even run the program, we need to pass the argument. So the command that we are going to use to run the program, let's pass argument. Let's give it the arguments for main, because immediately we run it, main is going to run. So if there are arguments for us to give to main to work on, then we have to give it with a command. Once we are going to do that, we can say that they are command line arguments, because those arguments, we don't add it directly inside the program that we are writing. So if I want my main, assuming I want main to add 4 and 6, okay, I can't come and write 4 and 6 here. No. Okay, because this is the definition for main. When we're doing for sum, if you pay attention, down here we didn't say 4 and 6 here. No, we gave it placeholders, which are the arguments we are talking about. We gave it placeholders. But unlike this sum, where we gave placeholders here, then we came here and gave it the actual value. For main, even though we can give the placeholders, so the placeholders that we give to main, there are 2 of them. If you want to give placeholders, they are called this. I'll not do the right thing right now. I mean, I'm intentionally writing this for now to explain something. So these are the 2 placeholders we are passing to main. But at what point in time in your program will you get to define what Argc is and what Argv is? That's what I'm trying to explain. When you are defining sum, you put X and Y here. But inside the main, when you wanted to use or call sum, you are able to then give it the values 8 and 24. So you have the chance to pass some actual values to your sum function or any other function for that matter. Any function at all in C that you create, you get the opportunity to pass the actual values to it. But for main, there is nothing like that, because you are not going to reuse main. Main is not called anywhere. It is only defined. We don't call it anywhere. We don't declare it anywhere. The compiler understands main. Okay, it is only defined. So per the definition, if it is expecting this argument, when should we provide the actual values? Assuming I wanted to provide 2 arguments, 2 and 4, where do I put it? That is the question. For us to be able to pass some form of argument, the real values of argument for the main function, I have to do it when I am calling the program. The reason is that whenever I call my program or whenever I run my program, the first thing that it does is to run the main function. So I know for sure that when I run my program, it's going to run main function. So to run it, I'll pass the 2 values that I want to send to it. So if it's like 2 and 4, then I'll pass 2 and 4 to the run command. And C compiler understands that this argument or these values or not variables, these values that I'm passing belongs to the main function. They understand it. Once I'm able to pass it through the command line, it is the argument for the main function, and for that matter, we can call it command line argument. So that is where we got the concept from, command line arguments, because once I'm about to run my program, I'm able to pass these arguments to the main function. I hope that is clear and we can move on. Yes, Sima.
So, Doc,
Right.
Does it mean that this main function now is the same thing as those prototype that they used to give us?
Which prototype?
As in the ALX task.
No.
The main function is the same thing as those prototype.
No. The prototype is different. The prototype is like when we did this. So this is a prototype. The prototype is just telling you that, hey, I have a function like this somewhere. When you see it, this is how it looks like. Okay, that's why we call it declaration. You're declaring that there is a function like this somewhere you're going to meet. So when they ask you in your task, you will start to create a main.h prototype. We are not talking about this main function. That's different. We are just saying that, oh, create a header file and put all the prototypes, that's declaration of the various functions you are going to be using inside that file. So that's totally different. Okay, here I'm making reference to this function, the main function. So it is a whole function that has like the most control. I mean, it's the first point of entry in any C program. So that's the first thing your compiler considers. So almost every other thing that is going to happen happens within main function. You get it? So if it is a country, that is like the international airport where every airplane will pass through to enter the country. You get every flight will go through.
You know why I asked? You know why
Why?
I asked?
Why?
After the commenting, when you are writing a code, after the commenting, the next thing you see is those prototype that they ask us to use. Then before you open the braces and start whatever you want to do. So that was why I asked if it's the same thing as it's doing the same thing that the main is doing.
Okay. So just understand the flow. Okay. All the other things, in fact, you add these things before you even include your main function. Okay. And each of them has a role to play, especially when you start looking at how the C program is compiled. But when it comes to executing the code itself, these things are like meaningless. They are like, they don't have, I wouldn't say they are meaningless. They have their role, okay? But when it comes to the actual work that your program is doing, the first thing we look at is the main, whatever is inside the main function, okay? So when we start running this program, obviously we would have done the compilation and everything, we would have done everything. So at the end of the day, after we have done compilation and all of those sorts, these things, now the computer understands it. So it's like they will be ignored, sort of. So the main thing is the function, the main function. We'll now get into main function. But now let me delete this two before I confuse someone. We get into the main function. That's the point of entry into the program itself. So whatever your program is going to do, that's the first thing. It enters, and once it enters this, then it can interpret all the rest. You will say, oh, here there is a variable declaration here, and it has been assigned to 8. Here to the race. Then it goes on. Okay, this means print, this means return. It goes in that order. But the very first thing it does is enter the main function. That's what we are saying. Okay, so that's like the first thing that the computer goes to, or you have a lot of functions in your program. In fact, when it comes to C, we break down our programs into functions. But the very first function that is going to run is the main function. That's the very first one. Okay, that's different from your header files, your prototypes, and all those ones are essential when you are compiling the program. But here we are looking at, after you've compiled the program already, you've gotten the executable file and you are going to execute it. So now your concern is not the header files. Your concern is not the declarations of functions that you have. Your concern is the actual thing that you want the program to do when you run the program. So when you run the program, in this case, for instance, the program is to add 2 numbers. Okay, so when we run it, it's going to add those 2 numbers. How does it do that? The first thing is we enter the main function and see what is in there. There are some variable declarations and assignments here going on. Then there is a call to the sum function, and the return value is passed to Z. And here we go ahead and print Z. Okay, so that is the sequential order in which your program goes. And I said that for us to pass arguments to function main, because we don't get to call function main anywhere, we have to pass those values during the command for calling the program itself. Okay, because as soon as we call the program, main has been executed. We won't get to call it anywhere again. So you can't say, oh, let me wait and call main and pass some values to main. No, there is no way you will get to call main. So the only time you can send values to main is by calling it during the when you are running the command to open the program. I hope it makes sense. Any other question? Okay, so one thing that you should see is that whenever you are calling a function, okay, this is where, for instance, in this our case, this is where we defined sum. Where you define the function is not where you use it. It is where you call it that you use it. Okay, so almost every function that you create is used somewhere else. So you give the power to use it to something else. So with our main function and with command line arguments, the advantage we get is that we get to control our program from the outside. Why do I say so? With sum, as we see here, if I want to pass any set of values into the sum function when I'm calling it, it has to be within the program that I write. Pay attention here. If I need sum to add up two numbers right now, okay, I have to pass my values. So just as I did here, inside this program, I can do it such that when it is running, that is when the values will be entered, but it is still within the program. Okay, but if I want the ability to operate my program or pass some values to my program outside the program itself, so we say you control the program from the outside. Here, if you want to control the sum function, you have to pass the values in your program before you compile the program itself. A set of values you want to pass into all the other functions you create, you have to put it inside the program. So now, what if I want to make it open such that I am able to pass values even after compiling my program? So before you compile your program, you can pass all the values that you want to pass. Like you can control it anyhow you want, but with the code that you've written. So you can write code that, okay, here enter two values. Here I've already given a value. Use it this way, use it that way. All those ones inside the program. But the question is, what if we need something that should be outside the program? So let's look at a practical case. If I have a program, assuming that I want that program that I've written, probably, I think, okay, I came across this example, I think it makes sense. Let's say we have written, you and I right now, we've written a program in C, and what the program does is that it tells us the current temperature in the city where you are. Current temperature in the city where you are. You know that we can go ahead and declare the city, okay? But what we can do is that when we are about to run the program, so let's say we have a program called, the name of the program, let's say current temp. Let's say that's the name of the program. So if I do .this, it's going to run the program and give me the current temperature of the city, okay? But we want to pass the name of the city so that it's able to give us the temperature. I could have hard coded it inside the program. So inside my main function, let me say, let's assume we're using main void. I could have said, okay, let's say character, then say city is equal to, then I'll put mine in there, say Accra. Okay, I could have done this and maybe print out something. Okay, this could have been fine, but you know that I forced my code to just print out the value for Accra. What if somebody outside Accra wants to use it? So the other way that I can do it is, okay, this time around, whenever you call the name of the program like this, just give us the name of your city. So somebody will go current temperature Lagos. Then the program will print out the current temperature for Lagos for us. Another person will go current, maybe I should stick to the cities I know before I go and make a mistake. But anyway, whatever city you find yourself in right now, you just do current temperature and the name of the city, okay, and it's able to give you. What is actually happening here right now is that this value that you are providing as part of the name of the program, this is part of what we are calling command line arguments. And now you understand what command line is, you understand what arguments are, okay? So this is a command line argument. The reason is that this that you are doing it in a command line. It's a command that you are writing for the program to do something. And you are providing this value, but this value that you have provided will actually be passed on as an argument to the main function. So after you have given, you have passed Lagos, for instance, you are going to have it passed on here, something like this, as Lagos, okay? So that is the more reason why we call it a command line argument. So all that I've been doing so far is to help you understand why we call these things command line arguments. Once you understand them, it will become easier for us to operate on them. Any questions so far? Any questions so far?
So, Doc, what you are saying in essence is once you must have written all your code,
yeah,
then and you want to pass another thing to interpret, or for the code to interpret it, that becomes a command line argument.
Exactly. So after you have compiled your program, you want to be able to push things to your program. So let's say, okay, let me use another example. So you probably have developed a program in C, but you are checking for, say, password and username. So let's say my program is called my app. That's the executable file. So if you run my app, I expect you to provide what your name is and what your password is. In fact, when we are done here, go and try something like that. Just create any program at all, then make sure it's taking 2 parameters like this, okay? And these 2 parameters have to be equal to something. All right. So we are assuming, or maybe let's just take one parameter called password. So there is a secret password that we want anybody at all who's going to open our app has to have that password before they can use it. Okay, so what I expect is that anytime you're about to execute this my app, so you use your command as this. The next thing you do is pass your password. So assuming my password is secret, that is the only way I'm able to open the program. Okay, in this scenario, this thing here, which is the password, is a command line argument. And the program is actually expecting 1 command line argument. Okay, so it's expecting at least, this extra command line argument before it runs. Okay, so that is the idea. It helps you control the program from the outside. So someone else who doesn't know probably enter something else, say try password 1 2 3, and you don't grant the person access. Another person try something, Obed, you don't grant the person access. Okay, so you are giving control after you have already compiled the program. Without this, every other thing has to be hard coded inside the program. But when you do this, you don't hard code it, you give access, like control outside the program. Please, I hope that makes sense and we can move on. So now that we know what command line arguments are, we need to know in C the 2 arguments that are of interest to us are Argc and Argv. Argc is very simple, very, very simple, and all of us won't have a problem with it. Argc is just like the count of arguments. How many command line arguments are you passing to this program? That is all. Argc is what? How many command line arguments are you passing to this program? For here, there are things that you just need to know. There is nothing like, hey, how did you come about this? There are things that you just need to know. Argc is like how many command line arguments, okay? And what I'm about to say, that's why I said that for this you just need to know, is that the people who gave us the programming language, what they told us is that the syntax is that anytime you write a program like this, my app, okay, the name of the program, in fact, is also considered as a command line argument. The name of the program itself is considered as a command line argument. You just need to know that. There's no reason to fight over it. Yes. Harun, are you asking a question?
No, I'm not.
Okay. All right. So the name of the program itself is considered what? A command line argument. This means that all these while that we've been writing programs that we've been executing without passing any other thing, we are actually passing one command line argument. Okay. So C already understands that once you use the name of the program, that is one command line argument. So in fact, for your function to run, for your program to run, any C program at all to run, it needs a minimum of one command line argument, a minimum of one. And that minimum is the name of the program, because without the name, your program will not run. Without a name, your program will not run. And I said that Argc is an integer telling us how many command line arguments you have. How many command line arguments you have. Okay. So if I have said that the name of the program is also a command line argument, and to run any C program, you need a minimum of one, which is the name of the program. Then what should be the value of Argc? This means that Argc can never be 0. And I hope you agree with me on that. Argc can never be 0. Because as soon as you type the name of the program to run it, already you have provided one command line argument. So you've put something on the command line that you need to run. So that is automatically one argument. If I go ahead and provide the password, say secrets, as another argument to this, then currently I'm dealing with two arguments. So Argc becomes equal to 2. So by default, Argc is equal to 1 by default. That is, if you haven't provided any extra arguments. Argc is always equal to 1, which is the name of the program. So you hear about some generalizations. The one is that there's always at least a minimum of one argument for any C program. The second thing you may hear is the fact that Argc is always a non-negative number. It can't be negative, obviously. There's always a minimum of 1. So it's 1 or more. It can't be negative. In fact, it can't even be 0. Okay? So it is always a minimum of 1. 1 is when you have what? The name of the program alone. And if I add more, say my name, then now we are getting 1, 2, 3. So Argc becomes 3. Please pay attention to that. I hope counting isn't a problem. The mistake a lot of us do is that we usually leave out the name of the program, then we'll count the rest, which is a big no. The name of the program itself is the first one. Then every other thing should also be counted. So that is for Argc. Now, what is the Argv? Argv is actually an array. Okay, so we have talked about arrays. But another important thing is that even though we are saying it's an array of all the commands that the command line arguments you provided. So we've already learned that an array is what? A collection of values, right? An array is a collection of values of the same data type. Collection of values of the same data type. Very important, because going on Monday we are starting to talk about structures where we'll look at collection of different data types. So keep in mind, array, collection of values of the same data type. So here, what is the data type of interest when we are giving commands to our program? Obviously, we wrote things like secrets, we wrote things like obed. It could be anything. In fact, we could even write 1, 2, 3. But what is important is that all of these are considered as strings. Even when you are writing numbers, they are still strings. Pay attention to that. Anything that you are just writing on the as a command line argument is considered a string. So whether you like it or yes, anything you provide as a command line argument. So after writing your program's name, in our case, my app, then bring in something. Let's say my password is 1, 2, 3. This 1, 2, 3 is not the normal integer 1, 2, 3 that, or 123 that you know. This is a string, and it should be treated as such. So for you to be able to use this efficiently, you need to understand the concept of strings in C. Okay, very important. So then, this argument, Argv that we have is actually a character pointer, right? Which we have already spoken about. I hope somebody is not holding their head and cringing that, hey, these things again, pointers again. In fact, from now onwards, almost everything we'll do in C is our pointers. So we have to start getting used to hearing about pointers and what they do. Okay, but basically, all you need to remember, character pointer is like, it helps us get strings without, by default, we don't have like a primary data type called string in C. So we have to have an array of characters to say they are strings. Okay, that is all. That's the only reason why we have like this. Okay, so it's just telling us that, oh, okay, all the things that are in this array are strings. That is all it is telling us. They are strings. So just remember that they are strings. So if I have, say, my app 1, 2, 3 obed, you would realize that this make up Argc will be what? How many? Someone should help me with that. Argc will be equal to, yes, anyone. Argc will be equal to what? Quickly. Oh. Denson, I can't hear you.
Argc will be equals to 3.
3. Okay. All right, thank you. So the name, then 2 others. So this is 1, 2, 3. There are 3 arguments that we are passing to our program. All right. Once we are passing those 3 arguments, these 3 arguments are going to be put, so in memory, in the memory that we are going to have something like this. 1, 2, 3. Then obey. Okay. We'll have something like this. In fact, all these are strings, so they will be put into this stuff. So this is what we are saying. Argv is equal to this. Okay, that's what we actually have. So Argv is equal to all of these. I hope we are getting it. It has 3 strings. The first one being the name of the program, then every other thing that was passed to it. So these are the arguments, the command line arguments that we have. All right. This means once we know this, we should be able to write code to pick up the name if you want to display the name of your program. So I can write a program that will display, assuming this in our case, then my app is the name of the program, 123 is the password, Obed is the username. So I can write a program that prints out the name of the program. I can write a program that prints out the password. I can write a program that prints out the username. And this should be easy if we already remember our arrays. So we have Argv now equal to something of this sort, my app. Hey, sorry, I think it was 123 first before Obed. Okay. So this means that I think I have to do a small recap with arrays before somebody gets confused. But I mean, we talked about in arrays, the index is very important, okay? And index always starts counting from 0. So this is index 0, index 1, index 2, okay? So when we look at the size of this array, we are looking at how many strings are contained in this array. Okay, how many strings are contained in this array? There are 3 of them which we've already discussed. So when we are dealing with the size, we can do something like this. This is the size of this particular array. Okay, and everyone should understand this, that once we have v3, what it means is that we are passing 3 different command line arguments, and these 3 include the name of the program. Please understand that. That's the size 3. It means that we are passing 3 command line arguments. It basically means that for you to run this program, what you did was that you put 3 things on the terminal. You type 3 different words on the terminal. So the first thing you type in our case is the name of the program, which is my app. The second thing you typed was the password, which is 123. And the third thing you typed was the username, which is Obed. So those are 3 things. But for us to be able to access each of them, Argv0 will help us access the string at index 0. Argv1 will help us access the string at what? Index 1. And in the same way, Argv2 will help us access the string at index 2. So this means that if I ask you to print out the password, you know that it is what? Index 1. For that matter, you are going to be printing Argv1. Okay. So yeah, I think this is pretty easy. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Yes. All right. So
Doc.
Yeah.
Doc, what you're saying in essence is that this Argc doesn't act like Argv, as in starting from, if you want to count it, you won't start from 0, 1 till you get to the number of arguments that are there.
With Argc. So in this our case, Argc is 3. Right? In this our case, Argc is 3. So what's the question?
I said, are you hearing me?
Yeah, I can.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you.
It's my network.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, please. I can hear you clearly.
I was saying, ALX. If we are counting it, doesn't if you count it, that's where we are counting Argv from 0, 1, 2, and the rest. Just going to be 1, 2, 3, or depending on the number of arguments that we have. We want to use ALX.
Okay. Yeah, so the thing about arrays is that when we are dealing with arrays, okay, there are two major things that we use. We have elements and index. Elements are also known as members. Okay, and index. It's the same thing, except that when we talk about index, we start counting from 0. Okay, so elements is like the number of items in the array. And obviously, to us, when we are counting, we love to count from 1. So if there are 3 things, you count 1, 2, 3, and you get 3 of them. But when you are using the index, and in programming, we'll be using index a lot. In fact, almost everything you do, and you would have realized by now that your ALX tax always starts from 0. So as programmers, you should be comfortable with starting to count from 0. So it's not any different, except that when we are counting, we start counting from 0. The fact that you counted from 0 and ended at 2 doesn't mean they are not 3 items. They are 3 items. When you were counting, you started counting from what? 0. That's all that it means here. So ALX is telling us that there are 3 elements. So this is the first element, element 1, element 2, element 3. Or you can say members, the first member, second member, third member. But when you want to work with it practically, we work with the index or the indices. Okay, for that matter, you no longer start counting from 1. You count from 0, 1, 2. 0, 1, 2 is still 3 items. Okay, so it's not any short of an item. It's still 3 items. Except that when you were counting, you started counting at 0. So let's get comfortable at counting from 0. Okay, that is the life of a programmer. They taught us in school that when you're counting, start counting from 1. But as a programmer, it's good you start learning from now to count from 0. Okay, so even though you have 0, 1, 2, those are 3 things. So it just matches perfectly with your ALX that says 3. And it only means that once you have seen ALX to be 3, it only means that you have 0, 1, 2 indexes when you are using the index to access it. Okay. I hope you've gotten the understanding.
Yes, I get you.
Okay. So when you go ahead and do Argv of 3, you've actually trying to access the 4th element. Okay, which is wrong. This, you said there are only 3 elements, so it should end at 2. You can't access this. All right, but in C in particular, when we are dealing with command line arguments, what you realize is that this value, okay, the value equal to the ALX will always give you a null, okay, or 0. Some references say 0. So either 0 or null. What we are saying is that if you have Argv, index of ALX, it is always equal to null, or as I said, some references use 0. So it's equal to 0. Okay. Anything beyond that will give you a how do you call it? A garbage value. So if you do this, so that if ALX was 3 and you do Argv of 4, you should expect garbage value. Okay, but the last one is usually the null pointer. So that tells you like end of your string. At least for those of us who have done strings before, you should be able to imagine this. Okay, so the very last item the very last item in your command is like the null string, null character. Okay, that's 0, showing that that is the end. So when you're running your program, sometimes you want to check for the very last one to see that that is the end of the string. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so now I think with the basics covered, we can start doing some bit of practicals. And let's see. A quick summary of what we have done. We said Argc tells us is an integer. Okay, Argc is an integer. That tells us the total number of what command line arguments. Then Argv is a string. It's a string that contains, a string array. Okay, it's a string array. So an array of strings. So we have a collection of strings that tells us what command line arguments were passed. All right. So let's try some basic write-ups. Okay, unfortunately, we can't use this platform. We can't use this because we don't get to run there's no shell for us to run the commands ourselves. So we have to come to Replit, create one here, PLD command line arguments. Okay. All right. So this time around, we don't want void. We want to pass the command line. I hope you people can see. Okay. Great. So we said Argc. Okay. Then the other is a character pointer, Argv. Okay. So this is how you define your program. This is how you define your program. Sorry. This is how you define a program. So all you have done here right now is that this. Why has the color coding changed? Is there something like that? Anyway, I just hope it will return back. So all that we are saying here right now is that this particular function, main function, now has arguments. So you realize that initially when we had it, it was void. Okay, it was void. And before I started this whole thing, I told you that the main function can take 2 arguments. The first one is void, and the second one is the command line arguments that we are discussing as Argc and Argv. Okay, so now we want to be working with Argc and Argv. This is because it gives us a lot of control over our program. That's the essence of having these two. It gives us control over our program. So if, let's say, our interest is printing out, let's print out, say, we are interested in printing out the total number of arguments passed to this program. So %d, then Argc. All right, so we can just go ahead. Please just know that this is no different from all the array stuff that we've done, all the other function stuff that we've done. It's the same thing. You're just building on. And this helps us, like, it adds some kind of flexibility to the programs that we can write. Okay. So all that you care to know right now as we are learning it is how do I assess the command line arguments, the arguments that are passed to this program? How do I assess it? Okay, so let's see. Argc obviously has to be like, an integer. How do you call it? it has to be an integer, right? And say this will be the set of, how do you call it, the set of variables. Okay, so for instance, if I go ahead, go to this program, I've got to compile this first. So let's compile main.c. all right, let me ls. So we have a.out. Okay, so a.out gives us 1. Who can explain why it's giving us 1? Yes, who can explain why a.out here gave us 1?
The command line.
Not smart.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I said the command line argument give us 1.
Why is it 1?
The name of the file.
Okay, thank you. So it is 1 because the only thing we provided in our command was the name of our program. Okay, in this, our program was called a. So let me do another thing. Remove a.out. Let me remove it. Then recompile this main.c and call it my app as we were doing. Okay, so hopefully we now have my app. All right, so the name of my app right now is my app. So if we go ahead and write this, my app, the thing is you have provided just one command right now, just one. And in the code, what we are trying to do is that you know that this part of the argument, it takes up the number of command line arguments. So how many did you provide? When you're writing a code, you wrote just the name of the program. For that matter, it's going to print out only that one for you, which is 1. So if we go ahead and add more to that, say 1, 2, 3, go back. We are getting 3. The reason is that now I have the name, which is 1, this 2, and this 3. Do we get it? So at the end of the day, maybe you want to check let's say your program expects a minimum number of command line arguments. So the reason why this gives you that control, like you can write your program should be used with a certain minimum number of command line arguments. Without that number, the program shouldn't run. Okay, so for instance, if I want this particular program that I've written, my app, I want it to be opened with a minimum of 2 or 2. I want it has to be 2. If I want it to be 2 before it prints out something, say hello. Okay, so let's try that. I want it to be 2. That means that the first thing I want to check is check if. So let's do check if 2 arguments were passed. How do you check that? You can use an if statement. So if we want to see if 2 arguments were passed, so what do? The ALX will tell us the total number of arguments that was passed. So all we do is to check if ALX is equal to 2. Do you think I'm going to get into trouble right now? Anyone think I'm going to get into trouble right now with what I have done? Then, I'm still waiting for an answer. Anyone think I'm going to get into trouble with what I've done? Then to print out, hi, welcome. Oh, so nobody thinks I'm going to get into trouble. Okay, let's clear this, please. Oh no, I didn't mean this. Oh no, false. Let's see. Okay. All right. So what are we doing here? The first thing is that for this program to run, this program has obviously just one line to run, but it's going to only run if I provide arguments, 2 arguments. Okay. If I do not provide the 2 arguments, let's make it more interesting. So if I do not provide the 2 arguments, tell me sorry. Try again. So sorry. Try again later. So basically, it's just helping us check, okay, how many arguments did this person provide? Okay, so it's giving me control. I want you to provide 2 arguments. If you don't provide it, I'll run. That's what I'm doing here. Okay, so let's go ahead and recompile this. GCC main.c, then output to my app. Great. Now let's call my app. So if I hit enter right now, what do I expect? Somebody who hasn't spoken today, please. Somebody who hasn't spoken today. So if you know you are one of those people, hi, Ratty.
Hello. It will say sorry, try again later.
Okay, so it's going to tell me sorry, try again later. Why do you say so?
Because it has not received the 2 documents that we want for it to print hi welcome.
Okay, thank you. So we checked if there are 2 arguments, ALX provided. That's 2 command line arguments. Okay, but as I have right now, I have only 1. And I am saying only 1 for you to pay attention to this, because at a point in time, you tend to forget that the name of the program is also a command line argument. This is the command line that we are working with. So so far as I'm entering something, I've written 1 string right now. If I hit my space key and I type another thing, then I've added another. So without adding another, if I hit enter, it says, sorry, try again later. I want to put my new line here. Okay, so let's try that again. Sorry. Oh, what is happening? My GCC main.c my app. Okay, so I've recompiled it. So let's try that again. My app. Sorry, try again later. Okay, so another person who hasn't spoken should go for this. My app 1, 2, 3 Obed. What do we expect? Another person who hasn't spoken. What do we expect? Yes.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, Orion.
Yeah, how is it?
I'm good.
I
hope you are good.
think that is going to print. Yeah, I'm good. I think that is going to print hi welcome, since the command line argument is more than 1.
Okay, but the condition we are checking, pay attention to the condition we are checking. In the if statement, what are we checking for to say hi, welcome?
Can I go ahead?
In the if statement, we are checking if the argument
is what
is right, or if the person write anything in the command line.
No, pay attention to this particular line. The if condition over there.
Strict equality. So it wants 2 arguments in total.
Okay.
So since it's more than 2, it will print sorry, try again later, because it's more than 2.
All right, thank you. So very important. In here we are checking if this value is equal to this value. Okay, it's equal to, nothing more, nothing less. So far as it is not equal to, this condition is not met. Once this condition is not met, we aren't going to execute the block of code inside that. Would rather go to the else statement and execute what is here. So hopefully when you print this, it should still give you sorry, try again later. And the only time this is going to work and give you the hi welcome is when you have provided exactly 2 arguments. The thing that worries a lot of people is that usually they will think, oh, this is just the name of the program and I provided 2 arguments. That is 1, 2, 3 and obed. That is why I chose to do this example. Okay, so this should be considered as an argument. You are writing something into the command line. So from now onwards, whenever you are about to, even when you're not dealing with this stuff, whenever you're about to run your program, you should start thinking in that direction. Like anything I write to run my program is actually a command line argument. So if I write just one thing, that's the name, that is 1. If I write more than that, then there is a particular number I need to pay attention to. So now let's just try something with my app, then 1, 2, 3, hit enter. So it says hi, welcome, because we've provided 2 command line arguments. Right. Okay, so now that we have this, let's see. Let's write our code such that the program is expecting your name so that it says hi to you. That's what we want our program to do. So for this program that we have written, whenever you want to run the program, we want to capture your name so that we send you a customized greeting to you. How do we do that? So in this case, we are interested in getting the array, the string of arrays that we are using. Okay, very important. So once we have gotten the 2 command line arguments that is provided, we know that the very first one is the name of the program, and the second one is your name. In this our case, is your name that we expect. So what I want to do right now is I want my program to say hi, welcome, say Obed. So hi, welcome, Obed, or Obed, welcome to the name of my program. So Obed, welcome to my app. If my program is called my calculator, Obed, welcome to my calculator, or whatever the name of the program. So let's try something like that. The first thing, we are going to maintain this code, but what we are interested in is now helping us get the exact value, which we've already looked at. We can use Argv and the index of the argument to get them. Okay, so right here, if I want to print hi, then pass the name. Sorry, we want to pass a name, then hi Obed, more percent conversion than, oh, keep quiet, I've not gotten the hi Obed or hi name, welcome to then name of the program. Okay, all right, so then we're going to pass values here. Let's see who catches me make this mistake. Those who haven't yet spoken, are you there? Those who haven't yet spoken, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, so help me. What problem do you think this program is going to face?
Okay,
I've told you what I expect. Okay, yeah.
Array values should be one less. It should be 0 and 1.
Okay. Why do you say so?
Because if you just put your name, it should be the first and second elements in the array should be position 0 and 1.
Okay. So right now, if I go ahead and say I do something like this, I just want to make sure that I understand. So if I go ahead and do something like this and say Obed, what in the first place, what do I expect for this statement? So assuming that is all I have, what do I expect to see?
Found the program name and Obed will be stored into the Argv array, and there'll be a position 0 and 1. So we'll print Obed as the first
okay,
element.
That's Argv1.
Yes.
Okay.
There'll be no Argv2.
Oh, okay. So there may not be an Argv2, but at least I like it, but you would have to also remember that I said something about ending.
Are you talking about the pointer? Oh, okay. If you're saying that you'll be a garbage value, is that what you're saying?
It will be a 0 and now value. Okay.
Okay, no value. Then
yeah, so,
I think maybe there should be a pointer for the array argument.
Oh, okay. Here we have to put a pointer here, as in this.
Yes, as I'm saying. Yes.
Do you all agree?
I'm not sure myself, but I would try that.
Okay, we can try it, but I'm sure when I put it there, you saw that there was an error.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I want to show myself.
Yeah, but you should remember that these are strings we are dealing with, and arrays, the name of the array itself is more like pointer to a string, like something like that. Okay, I know the pointers are becoming confusing a bit, but sometimes you should take them as they are. A point to a string. Okay, so now let's go to 1 and 0. 1 and 0. Someone else, tell me, do you think this is going to run? What am I expecting? Someone else who hasn't spoken today. Yes. Before I start pointing names, please give yourself up. Yes, Michael.
Okay, I think the issue would be just like the previous one. Since you expect two easy arguments now, and you're only giving one, so I think the arg0 will run, but the arg1 is going to return null. Yes.
Anyone disagree with Michael? I'm happy to disagree with him, but anyone else? Okay, thank you. So, Michael, you needed to pay attention to that as well. That we had a first part, there is a conditional check. We are checking if the argument is, if we have two arguments before we even come here to print. And I provided only one argument. For that matter, this block of code is not going to run. We are rather going to get in here and say, sorry, try again.
Sorry, I lose focus conditions.
Yes, I intentionally played that trick. Anyway, let's go. I have to first compile this before we can run. So this is the main.c. Output, we want to call it my app. Then, great. So now, another person who hasn't spoken, we are going to call my app and Obed. What do you expect? Someone who hasn't spoken? Please, a lot of you. ED, are you there? Edie, are you there? I think you haven't spoken today. TJ, apart from the earlier interaction, I haven't heard from you. TJ, are you there? And I think Rosemary, have you spoken? Any of you? Oh, help us. Help me. I'm dying. Help me.
Hello, Doc.
Hi, Tony.
I think it's going to print hi Obed. It's going to print hi Obed.
Is that all? Is that all? Hi Obed, that's all.
Hello?
Yes. Yeah. That's my.
Okay, we have two arguments. I think it will bring the first printf statement. We say, "Hi Obed, welcome to my app."
Okay. So let's see it. Let's try. Hit enter. Oh, someone wants to. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think the arrangement of the strings are wrong. Because Obed should come before my app.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In line 8, it should be Argv1, then Argv0.
Thank you. So this should be 1, and this should be 0. Okay. I have to recompile it. Hey, why? Is this new frozen?
Yes, it's frozen.
The computer has given up on us. Style of us. Yes, but I mean, once we understand the concept and what's happening, that's the most important part. Okay, so here we can do so many things. You can give power to your program, okay, outside your program. Like, you see how we are just using what the person who is going to run our program is going to give us. In fact, we don't know what the person is going to provide, but we can use that to control our program. So we can predict that, hey, we need you to add 2 things. We need you to bring 4 things. So if you're not bringing 4 things, I'm not giving you access to my program. Or if you're not bringing 4 things, I won't allow you to do this thing in my program. Or I need exactly 3 things or 3 or more things to do this. Okay, so that is how. For another example, you could probably write a program that you want them to pass the dates that they are accessing their program, and you check whether they still should have access. Maybe you want to check whether their permit has expired or not. Okay, all these things comes in when we are able to do this. Unfortunately, we won't be using C to be doing some of these things, so it doesn't really make much sense when we are talking about these things. But let's try and understand them. Let's try and understand the power that we have when we give control outside our program. Because when we start building platforms that's usable projects, these things will make more sense. Okay. So for now, our interest is understanding the command line arguments and how to use them. The computer says that it doesn't want to respond again. And I think one more challenge that I've seen, especially with the tasks that we've been given of recent times, is the fact that now that you are accessing, let's say, Arc A1, what did we say? Arc V1 in this case is Obed. And you know that Obed in itself is a string, right? Obed in itself is a string. You already, and a string is like what? An array of characters. So you have an array pointing to this array, or an array containing an array. Let me say that instead. So we had this is the first array. The first array contains something like my app. Then it contains another one, say Obed. Okay, for the example that we just did. This is an array, okay, with index 0 and index 1. But index 0 itself is also an array. Do you agree? That index 0 itself is an array.
Yes,
An array of characters.
It's always an array.
Thank you. Then this one too is an array of characters. Do we agree? So when you have an array within an array, what do we have? Multi-dimensional array. Thank you. A multi-dimensional array. And if I'll be frank with you, we all know that working with multi-dimensional array isn't fun. I don't know if someone has been able to make it fun.
Not at all. It's very confusing.
Yeah. So I think that is like one of the biggest headaches that you face when you're working with some of these things. But the only way that you can truly get to know it is by practicing, trying some of these things out. Okay. So in essence, what we have learned today and what you can do to get a better understanding of it is write any program at all. It doesn't have to be a complex program. Just write a simple program like we had. Make sure the block of code for your main. So you pass main, then you have Argc Argv. Let me ask a question. If you meet a program like this, say int x, character y. If you meet a program like this, do you have a problem with it, or do you think it's correct? Yes, I need your consent. Assuming this program had int x, then character y, will you be okay with it, or will you have a problem with it? Let me hear you. Linton says he thinks there is no problem. Not smart.
Yes. Why not the point? The reference sign. Why not come behind the char?
Behind us in here?
Yes.
This?
Then remove it from the other place, I think.
This? Okay, that's your suggestion anyway. Let me still put it here and let's argue in favor or against this one for now. So there is a debate in favor of or against. Data says
I think there is a problem.
the internet.
I'm saying it should be unsigned int.
Unsigned int. All right, thank you. So he thinks, or I think that's we've already said that this has to be a non-zero value. So obviously it has to be a non-zero, non-negative value. Okay. So putting unsigned there will guard it better.
Yeah.
So that's important. But I mean, if you get something like this, do you have a problem with it? Are you for or against the motion?
To remove the pointer sign, right?
No, I mean there is a function like this that you have seen somewhere. Will you say that it's wrong or it's right?
I have a problem with the pointer before the Y.
You have a problem with the pointer before the Y.
Yes.
Okay. Noted. Yes, nice person. Today everybody should speak. In fact, I haven't come across it. I'm just wondering, so that's what I'm asking. Let's see what you all think.
Okay.
Are you for or against? For the rest, why are you? Tony is for. Tony is for. Is there any difference?
Okay, if you do something like that, it's okay.
This one is okay, but the previous one was not okay.
The previous one is the same thing with this one. The previous one is the same thing with this one.
Okay. So you see how we've been playing with the. I was tempted when we were trying it. I was just tempted to do something like that, but these are just names, okay? Except that they've been used like, how do I call it, standard variables that have been used, and it makes it easier when you are working with it. But I'm sure you can replace it with anything, okay? Once you know what that particular placeholder is and what it means, then you should be able to use it, okay? So if you ever come across something that doesn't look like ALX and Argv, but is in this format, you should understand what they mean, okay? At least that tells you that you're not just chewing and pouring. You understand this. This just has to be an integer or an unsigned integer for that matter. Then this has to be a character pointer, okay? So however the character pointer is defined, either this way or that way, is a character pointer to an array of strings. Okay, so once you have something like that, that should work. All right, so our assignment will be, my computer is tired right now. Our assignment will be for us to go try some of these things out. Remember that this is strings that you are dealing with. Like, I mean, the Argv values. Okay, so let me change this to ALX and Argv so that I don't confuse anyone. The Argv values, remember that they are strings. Okay, so whatever index that you are targeting, they are strings. So if you want to operate on them, you have to operate on them as strings. For instance, if I want to check if the password that we provided is equal to a particular password that I'm expecting, and you know that in strings we can't just go and compare, say, secret is equal to secret. You know we can't do this in strings with strings, right? In C. I hope you know that. Like how we're checking if the arg value, let's say 2 is equal to 2. You know we can't do it with strings. Or you didn't know? In C.
I know it's
so
not
what? Okay, so what can we do?
String type.
Okay. So if I want to check, okay, no, that one is understood. Right now, let's assume that I had this my program, my app secret. That's the password the person passed. Okay. So this, as we know, is Argv what 1, right?
Yes.
So Argv 1 here is equal to secret.
Yeah.
And I want to check if the person entered the actual password. Let's assume my actual password is, say, Obed. Okay, so what I want to do is to check if what a person entered. So say Obed is equal to Argv 1. Can I do something like this?
No. there have to be two strings on the other side. So you have a string on your file. That you
but
be like
this will be a string because it's pointing to secrets. So that's also a string.
The obed itself. That's like your what you're comparing the variable the user is providing, or the input. You have to have a variable string to compare it to a variable array as well.
We would have created it as a variable and used the variable and compare it against the variable. But in C, there is something wrong with this. Which
I'm saying the obed you are comparing to the Argv one should also be an array.
So from your perspective, let me change this to the password. Say this is password. Then I'll say say obed. Okay. This will be a big challenge, and I tell you.
Yes, it is.
Because this points us in direction of this anyway. But I mean, after you've gotten this, are you saying we can just go ahead and do, say, this, even though this will not give us the string directly, but I mean, are you saying we could do something like this? That's the question. Can we use the equal to here, the equality sign, to check two strings if they are equal in C? That's the question. So in essence, what I'm trying to do here is trying to use is obed equal to secrets. Can we do something like this in C? Is anyone to defend the point?
Well, I think it's possible. It's the exact way of going about it that is kind of tricky, because I ran into a problem like this when I was trying to do an exercise. It was also validating user inputs. Like there was you use a scanf to take a name, then you say hello, so. Then there was another further task that you were supposed to validate the user input. So you would only print the welcome statement if it was either Alice or Bob. And I ran into this same problem. So I know it's possible, but it's the exact way of going about it that I'm not sure about.
Okay. All right. So the point is that in C, you can compare two strings with this equality symbol. You are not allowed to do that. So I can go ahead and do is obed equal to this. Okay. So you use the C function. Oh. If you ever came across this function?
We did a prototype of this in one of the past tasks.
That's to compare two strings.
That's to compare two strings, yes. So why the essence of this, or why we need this, is because we can't do something like this. If it was an integer, we could check if, say, 2 is equal to 2 or 2 is equal to 4, and we say no, it's not equal to. But for strings, we can't do that. So we have to use the function to compare them. Okay, so in our example, I was going to try and compare the value the person passed. So the assignment I'm giving right now is for us to take a password from a user. Let's say you created a program. The user is expected to enter a password, and inside the body of the program, you are checking if the password that the person entered is really what you expected the person to enter. Then afterwards, if it is, you print something to them. If it is not, you give them the warning. Okay, you get it. So your program is basically, you're writing a C program that takes a password. So a C program. When you do some of these basic things, then you are now putting together the pieces that we've learned. Okay, that's how we should practice these things and get them going. So you're just basically writing a C program that takes a password. as a command line argument. Afterwards, it check if the password given is the same as a predefined password. Then print out a message if it is. Print out a message to the user. Please, when you are doing some of this practice, try and use Replit, okay, or any online compiler that you can save the code and share with us, so that at least some of us who can see what our colleagues are doing, okay, and we'll learn from each other. Print out a message to the user if it matches, and if it doesn't match to, print out another message to the person. Do we get it, and can we do it? Yes. Do we get it, and can we do it?
I think we should try to do it.
Okay. So it's unfortunate that this is my PC, and it's almost 2 hours. All right. So right now, let me just summarize everything we've done. Then hopefully you do this assignment. Try and do it. Especially try playing around with the strings. I think that's the most important part. Play around with the strings. I'm sure some of you are wondering why most of the tasks that we do, we keep checking if something is equal to the now character. Okay, we check something like this. Sorry. All right. Remember, you're dealing with strings, and the end of every string is this thing. Okay, so we keep using this. Sometimes, per the tags that we've done already, sometimes you have to even make room when you are assigning your, that's the new concepts that we are learning, that's memory allocation. When you are assigning your memory allocation, sometimes you have to add an extra byte, or yes, extra byte. And usually the extra byte will accommodate this. Hopefully when we start talking about mallocs and things, dynamic memory allocation, I'll get time to explain these things. All right. But just understand that it is strings that you are dealing with. And at certain point in time in this particular argument, command line argument stuff, you need to know how to convert a string to an integer. Okay, so that is also very important. I don't know if you've realized, but there is this function that we've been using to convert strings. So I said if you pass, let's say if I write my program called my app and I decide to call it this way, say my app, and pass 2 arguments, 2 and 3 to it. Inside the body of the program, let's say inside the main, I can't do 2 plus 3. It's not going to work. The reason being that this 2 is a string, not an integer. This 3 is a string, not an integer. In some programs, if you go ahead and do this, it will give you 23, because you are just concatenating strings. You are putting 2 strings together. So 2 is a string, 3 is a string, and you put it together. You are not doing mathematics. So for you to be able to do the mathematics, you have to first convert this 2 to integer 2. Okay, and you can do that using this function. I think I came across another function, I've forgotten, that you can use. Then you have to convert the other option to this. So say A is equal to this, B is equal to that. And now I can do A plus B, and that will give me 5 in this case. Okay, so I want you, like, right from here, probably, if you have time, just take some time, try writing out a program like that and testing some of these like I've done. Use numbers, use strings, then make sure you do at least this one. Okay, comparing if the password matches or not. Then you try this one too, trying to pass 2 numbers to your command line for it to add the numbers. So try that one as well. Then give me feedback. Hopefully, Replit shouldn't just give up on you and allow you to share your link with me for us to see. So in summary of what we have done, we've talked about command line arguments and their essence. And I've said that for the command line arguments, it helps us give control of our program outside the program itself. Hi. Sorry. No. Bye-bye. See you. Okay. Yeah, so what I was saying is that with the command line arguments, okay, it helps us pass control of our program outside the program itself. So we don't need to be inside the code of the program to give those arguments. Outside the program, we can allow any user at all to provide their own parameters, even before we start running the program itself. Okay, so that is the essence, and it's very important. Okay, we'll get to see how important. I feel like we are not really doing like more practical of these things, even though the tasks are there, but the task is not requiring us to do the practice of the very things that we are studying. It's just giving us tough time. Anyway, that is fine. So for now, just as I'm summarizing, we have those ones. Then we've read about functions. We know what functions are. We know what arguments are. Once we pass an argument to a function, you can use it inside the function. So by passing command line arguments, we are able to use those arguments or values or whatever strings that we pass to the function. We're able to use it inside main. The interesting thing is that once you pass it to main, you can pass it to any other thing. Okay, so I could pass it to some other functions within main itself. All I need is the entry point. The entry point is main. So when I pass the command line arguments, I've given it to main. Once the values are available in main, I can use it anywhere inside the program. So I don't necessarily have to just use it within main. I can use it outside main as well. All right, so any questions before we end the session? Let me go back to the question. Pay attention to this and hopefully try and do it and get back to me on it. Any questions? Yes, any questions? The way the house is quiet, is it that everybody is confused or everybody is fine? Which is which?
Me, I'm confused. Don't worry. So
hey.
I lost. See, wait, no, it's not you. It's not you, please. I'm going to watch.
No, so let's sort it out. What's the problem? What's the concern?
No. I was distracted throughout this class. Maybe
okay.
Okay. So, but then I'll watch it again because I don't know what to ask you.
Okay. I hear you.
Don't feel bad, please.
Oh no. That's fine. Yes. Any other person? Please, so if you have questions, ask, and let's go. Yes. Go to daddy. Let daddy help you, okay? Bye. Yes. Any questions? So in essence, all that you need to know is the fact that when you are passing arguments, command line arguments, how many arguments did you pass? That's all. How many arguments did you pass? And I hope by now we all can tell. So we have the name of the program is one, then every other. That is it. So the ALX part, I think, should be the simplest. Okay, ALX part should be the simplest. How many arguments did you pass on the command line? I know you, I got you. So I can use that to restrict my program. Say, hey, you need to give a minimum of 2 arguments, or you need to give a minimum of 5 arguments, or I need exactly 3 arguments. So I can use that to control my program. Okay, so if you don't give me 2 arguments, I won't let the program run, that kind of thing. All right. And in fact, you can use it to do a lot of other things as well. But at least that's the idea. I should know the exact number of arguments whoever is using my program is passing. Then I can use that information to my advantage. Then the second thing is that Argv is basically what? An array of strings. So there are quite a number of strings, and the strings are nothing but what a person types. What a person types is the string. So if you go for index 0, then we have all learned that index 0 is the name of the program, because that is the very first thing they type on the program when in the command line. So name of the program. Then any other thing they type becomes index 1, index 2, in that order, index 3, 4, 5, and so forth. So you should now be able to pick any of them. If it is the second index that you are looking for, just go grab it with the Argv index 2. Then you get that string. Whatever you want to do with a string. So in fact, our problem right now isn't even with Argv Argc. Argv Argc, we should understand, it just helps us give some strings to our program. Okay, so the problem now is working with arrays and strings. That's where the problem is. So if you find it difficult trying to work with Argv Argc, just go back to the basics: strings and arrays. But strings are arrays of characters. So strings and arrays, where you have the problem, then go and solve it from there. If you want to, you can always watch the lesson on arrays, then you get it. Please don't feel shy to go back. Don't feel shy to go back. I can't tell you the number of times that I go back to even watch videos that I did myself, just to understand some of these things again. But sometimes you forget, and it's normal, as humans as we are, until it becomes something you are doing on a regular basis. Okay, until it becomes something you are doing every single day, you are likely to forget some of them, and you have to find it easy going back to where you revise some of things. All right, any question before we bring the session to a close? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, then thank you all for coming. The assignment once more, please and please and please again, try it. I would love to see at least 5 people try it and get back to me. Maybe I should take time and how do you call it? Write it out, but so that I can share it. All right, so thank you and see you. I don't know when next POD is, but we'll find out. Thank
you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Doc.